Hi everyone, and welcome to our Get Out the Vote training. I'm Ella, an intern for the National Fellows team. Let's get started. Today, we're going to learn how to get out the vote both on Election Day and before, how to use both in-person and online techniques to turn out voters, how to tie GOTV plans into existing brands, how to build on the registration, education, and election excitement work already done, how to articulate voting rights, how to combat voter suppression and intimidation efforts, and how to act if a problem arises at the polls. What is GOTV? GOTV stands for Get Out the Vote or Getting Out the Vote. It includes all efforts to increase turnout and get as many people to the polls as possible. In the lead up to Election Day, you'll be hosting events that encourage people to mail in their ballots or show up at the polls. Be prepared to discuss the pros and cons of absentee ballots, early voting, and in-person voting on Election Day with each student. GOTV events bring together all the work you've done over the course of the semester, so they're very important. They should be exciting and fun events. Consider hosting rallies, parties, marches, and parades if you can. Virtually, build momentum through text, phone, and email chains reminding friends to vote. Start a social media campaign to educate your campus on how to request an absentee ballot and return it. On Election Day, you can also go live on Instagram or Facebook to answer questions. No matter what event or campaign you decide to do, getting out the vote is about creating excitement and building momentum so that people turn out and vote. As part of your campus plan and strategy, it's crucial to plan your GOTV effort ahead of time. Depending on your school's status, you might employ a mix of in-person and online tactics, or all online. As you plan out your semester with your engagement plan, make sure to focus on getting out the vote events, since this is what will make sure that students' voices are heard. At your events, you'll be educating students on these types of voting, registering students, and helping them through the voting process. There are many different ways to vote, including early voting, mail-in ballots or absentee voting, and in-person voting on Election Day. You're going to have to talk to students about what each of these categories mean and what works best for them. Make sure that you know your state deadlines for mail-in and early ballots. Just remember, your ultimate goal is to get students to turn out to the polls or ballot box before or on November 3rd. At GOTV events, you'll help students create plans to vote. This might involve helping a student fill out a form or having a short conversation. It's just about getting students to think about what's the best way for them to vote. We've created some plan to vote cards you can pass out. Just look in the Fellows Drive to find them. In order to help students, you'll need to understand the different types of voting and know what your state offers. Essentially, there are three main forms of voting: mail-in or absentee voting, early voting, and voting in person on Election Day. Mail-in or absentee voting involves voting before Election Day and not in person. Early voting, which some states offer, is usually in person before Election Day. Finally, there's in-person voting on Election Day. We're going to walk through these different types of voting in more detail, but we recommend looking up your state laws to see what your state offers and reaching out to your state director with specific questions. The nice thing about mail-in absentee voting is that it doesn't require voters to physically go to the polls. Mail-in and absentee voting help increase voter turnout by helping voters who would otherwise be unable to make it to the polls cast their ballot. Each state has its own mail-in or absentee rules. You should know what your state requires to request and mail in an absentee ballot. Keep in mind that COVID may have affected these policies, so look for the most up-to-date information possible before talking to students. Beyond knowing about requirements, you should be able to answer questions like, how do I ensure that my vote is counted after I mail it? Can ballots be forwarded to me at another address? What happens if my ballot is mailed to my old address? How does a return ballot impact my voter registration status? Generally, you'll have to send in a request to obtain a mail-in ballot. You may need to provide a particular reason why you're voting by mail with this request. Once received, you'll fill out the ballot and follow the instructions to mail it back. Please note, not all states or voting districts provide return postage. If you know a voter who needs help with postage to mail a ballot, please notify your state director immediately. SEEP recommends that fellows and voters check their state Secretary of State's website to find the most current information on mail-in and absentee voting requirements. Early voting is the ability to cast your ballot before Election Day. It's important because it breaks down barriers to voting by allowing for more participation. It creates a voting opportunity for people who might otherwise be left out, like students, people who will be out of town on Election Day, those with medical procedures or problems, campaign or poll workers, or even those with religious commitments. States with early voting typically have seen an increase in voter turnout and participation. It also helps alleviate long lines at polling stations by providing voters with 2 or more weeks to cast their ballots instead of just one day. Here are some common questions about early voting. Does my state offer early voting? How does early voting differ from mail-in or absentee voting? When does early voting start? Where do I go to vote early? Do I need my ID to vote early? Make sure you're familiar with the early voting laws in your state. If you have any questions about these laws, please ask your state director. Now we're going to take some time to talk about in-person voting. This involves going to a polling place and casting your ballot in person. Because of COVID, we recommend following all state and local health guidelines while voting in person and taking proper health precautions. No matter how many people you register to vote or educate on the candidates and issues, you haven't achieved your goal unless they actually go to the polls on Election Day or send in their ballots. GOTV is your strategy to ensure that registered voters turn out on Election Day. Make a GOTV action plan that is specific to the needs of your campus and discuss it with your SEEP state director and campus advisor. Make sure to maximize your outreach. Effective GOTV efforts include canvassing, phone calls, emails, and social media. Try to reach as many people as possible before the polls close. Remind people that it's Election Day, and be ready to tell them about polling locations, same-day voting and registration if applicable, and where to find candidate information. Identify polling locations for both on-campus students and in neighborhoods where students typically live, and sign up as many volunteers in advance as possible to help you get out the vote. GOTV efforts also include digital engagement, so make sure to take advantage of virtual and online programs. Some great GOTV activities include calls and texting change, reminding people to vote, a countdown to Election Day on your favorite social media platform, and a virtual GOTV rally or party on Election Day. Be creative with how you'll get your peers to the polls. One great example of GOTV activities is an I Vote Because campaign. On Instagram, Facebook, or Snapchat stories, you could post the phrase, I vote because, and have students reply with their answer. Share responses to start a conversation. We also recommend that you document your Election Day activities to boost participation. Take good photos so that you can capture the excitement of Election Day and share with your followers on social media. Additionally, share your photos with SEEP through the activity tracker so that we can feature them as a part of a nationwide campaign. Now we're going to talk about what to do if a problem arises at the polls. Sometimes a person's eligibility as a voter is questioned. This is not uncommon with student voters. If a poll worker tells a student that they are ineligible to vote for any reason, the voter should first call the Election Protection Hotline at 866-OUR-VOTE. From there, the Election Protection Hotline will tell students what steps to take next. That may involve requesting a provisional ballot, which is a type of ballot that allows someone to vote while also requiring them to prove their eligibility before the vote can count. Poll workers are required to give voters a provisional ballot, and the Election Protection Hotline will instruct students on how to prove their eligibility. Make sure to include information on provisional ballots in your voter education activities. In the last slide, we talked a little bit about the Election Protection Hotline. It's a nonpartisan coalition that provides information and assistance to voters at all stages of the voting process. You can make sure that students' votes count and protect their voting rights by giving them contact information for the Election Protection Hotline. Include seminars, lectures, posts, and more to educate students on potential voter intimidation practices and how to avoid being turned away at the polls. Also, encourage student groups to organize poll watching activities to guarantee voter rights. Additionally, let people know about the 1-866-OUR-VOTE hotline so students can call for expert advice if problems develop or they think they're being unfairly denied their right to vote. For more information, check out the Election Protection Hotline website. Your GOTV events should focus on the current election, but they'll also build towards future ones. The more you document your efforts and keep your momentum going, the more effective you'll be for the next election cycle. Document your most effective electoral engagement efforts through photos and videos, and have students, particularly communications and digital media majors, create and edit concise videos where they interview those involved in your campus engagement efforts and document their outreach. Also have them take photos for your social media. Post the most inspiring videos and photos on your campus website and send them to your state SEEP coordinators so that we can suggest your approaches to schools in other states and help them learn from your strengths. SEEP fellows are required to document their activities in the activity tracker. We recommend that you document your events immediately after they happen, so that you remember more and provide the most accurate and detailed information. This will help you better build on successful events in the future. Timely reporting will also help us share your successful techniques with other fellows and celebrate that success in our spaces. If you need help with the tracker, check out the mini training video on the website, or check in with your state director. The final report that you will complete at the end of the semester captures all the data that we need on the back end regarding your fellowship. It has questions about the types of projects you did, the events you held, and how many people you reached. These help us determine how effective the fellowship was. We do not look at these results as a reflection on the student, but as a reflection on our program and how we can improve it. We have lots of questions asking you to rate the program as a whole and give us specific feedback so that we can continue to grow as an organization. That's why it's critical that you complete this final report at the end of your semester. The final report shouldn't take much more than 20 or 30 minutes to complete. Some of the questions you will see are questions about the material you used, the events you held that were the most successful, and your opinion about the experience overall. As I said before, we take your feedback very seriously, and it won't reflect your success as a fellow. It just helps us improve the program for future fellows and accurately measure the impact our fellowship program is having on college campuses across the country. You must complete the final report as a part of your fellowship. Each fellowship marks one step closer towards institutionalizing engagement. So consider, where will you go from here? Reflect on the entirety of your action plan and update where needed. Document your most effective electoral engagement efforts through photos and videos. Use SEEP's Campus Electoral Engagement Assessment. Continue to work on institutional approaches. Encourage advisors to complete an online survey. Continue engagement work in local odd-year elections. Help students engage with issues they care about in non-electoral ways. We highly encourage you to update your engagement plan and either pass it on to the next fellow on your campus or continue the work with us next semester. Use data from NSOLV or another source to measure the success of your semester and adjust your plans to make your future efforts more effective. If you want more ideas on how to create a coalition or continue your long-term planning, check out our coalition building and long-term planning training. Have questions? Write them down and reach out to your campus advisor or state director. Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to check out and follow us on social media or join our Slack channel for conversations and idea sharing with our fellows all across the U.S. Once again, welcome to SEEP.